Well, good morning. Hopefully everyone's enjoying their last day at Husker Harvest Days. I'm always surprised. I kind of tend to mark time by when Husker Harvest Days comes around. I've been attending since I was a little kid, and obviously I'm not a little kid anymore. But it goes around pretty quick. But it's always good to be out here and getting to see everything that's new and what we can use as producers. I'm Mark McHargue. I'm president of Nebraska Farm Bureau, and appreciate you attending our media event today. We're going to talk about just a number of different issues, and Governor Pillen is going to be here and say a few words. We just got back from a trade trip to South Korea and Japan. Tell you what, two really important countries for us, but it was great to travel with Governor Pillen. He represented our state very well. And I'm going to talk about just a couple of my impressions.
Who looks worse, you or me?
I don't know. Do we both look a little droopy? It's been like 48 hours, so, you know.
You look good, Mark. You look good.
A couple of my impressions is the fact that it is a really exciting time to be a farmer and rancher in Nebraska. When you get to be overseas and you get to talk to people that are buying our product that we are producing very efficiently, high quality product, sustainable, on family farms and ranches, that is a great story to tell. One of the things that really surprised me is when we were talking to the people, they were so appreciative of what we do in Nebraska. As a matter of fact, one of the individuals that owns a busing company that's running on hydrogen, we were talking about our farms in Nebraska, and he said, "You guys are kings." And we're like, that seemed like a really strange thing to say, but he was saying that because we have so much land. I mean, we were in Seoul with 25 million people. We're in Tokyo with 35 million. They have people, but they don't have land. And the ability for us to farm and ranch and produce the food for the world is really humbling when you have people that don't have the ability to do that at all. And the food that they're producing, they want to make sure that they're buying it, that's a good quality, it's safe. And when we can reassure them that that's what we're doing, it's a pretty incredible story. One of the things that they really appreciate over in South Korea and Japan is the fact that we're generational on our farms. And what that communicates to them is that we actually know how to take care of our farmland and our animals. We're not 1, 2, 3. I'm 4th generation. My son's 5th generation. And we could talk about the story that we've been farming that ground for that long. We know exactly what sustainability looks like on those acres, and we got to tell that story. Nebraska, as everyone knows here, is the beef state. They love our quality of beef. They love the flavor. We're at the right price point. And one of the things I learned in South Korea that they were pretty clear on, that we've talked about quite a bit, as income goes up, they spend more money on meat protein. So they showed us a chart that rice intake in their diets are going down and meat protein is going up. And we were like, at that point, I was like, we are in the right spot. Korea loves eating their meat of all sorts, both beef and pork. And so to be there at the time when they're increasing their consumption was pretty incredible for me as a producer. We also went to a grocery outlet that has a lot of stores. Now I mentioned that in Seoul there's like 25 million people. Well, this one grocery outlet serviced 600,000 people a day. 600,000. And they prominently had Nebraska beef featured. And so to think about 600,000 people halfway around the world walking through a meat case looking at Nebraska products. That was pretty incredible for me as a producer to see that happen. And they like it. They like it a lot. I'm going to talk about just a couple other things. So we're talking about just our trade across the seas, them importing our product, and we have trade here in Nebraska or in the United States as well. But unfortunately, Not everybody wants to trade with producers in Nebraska or around the country. California has passed a law called Proposition 12, and it states that the law prohibits importing pork, veal, poultry products not meeting their California standards, which are non-scientific on animal welfare standards. That is wrong, that we are trading across the world without those kind of restrictions. And in America, we have a state that is putting restrictions on trade. We have to get that changed. And one of my asks of you today is that we are going to work to get language in the Farm Bill, and we need to talk to our representatives, our Nebraska representatives, and make sure they know that this absolutely has to get done. Our representatives saying that it's going to be a heavy lift is not good enough. We have to get new language on that nullifies that Prop 12 law in California. The last thing I want to talk about a little bit, I don't know if anybody really cares about this, but tax relief is fairly important. You know, if we're gonna be the best producers in the country, selling our beef products and our corn products and our ethanol around the world, in order to do that long term, we have to be profitable, right? I like to do it. I grew up on the farm. My kids grew up on the farm. I have a son farming, but we can't do it at a loss. And one of the things we have to control is one of the big inputs, and that's our tax system and our property taxes. We've had great work done. I want to thank Governor Pillen for his tremendous work this year on several issues within the tax arena, but there's really going to be more to do. So there's a couple things that I want everybody to be aware of. First of all, we have a direct property tax credit program. So when you take your tax sheet out, there's a line item on there that is a tax credit. Everybody needs to look at that number and know what that number is, and we can't take that for granted, because that program is giving back direct tax relief that's collected that goes back against our tax liability. The second thing is we've got a refundable income tax credit, and that's taxes that we have paid for K through 12 and community colleges that you actually do have to apply to get that back. That's almost 30% that we've paid into K through 12 and community colleges, but you have to take action to get that relief back. And then thirdly, with significant legislation on income tax, we're going to take that down, our income tax rate down to 3.99. That's going to happen over several years, and that'll be fully in effect by 2027. The last thing I want to talk about on spending is that we have to have local control on spending. We can do all kinds of stuff at the State House, but at the end of the day, if we can't control the local spending, we're not going to make progress. All the progress we made this year nearly is going to be erased by valuations going up 20%, sometimes 30%. And if we don't control spending and we don't lower our levies, all that tax relief we're doing is going to go away. So we passed legislation called Truth in Taxation. And basically it states that if any city, county, K through 12, community colleges, if they're going to go up on their tax asking 2% above real growth, they've got to have a public hearing on that. Those hearings are starting next week. And so we need to show up. We need to have our local officials understand what impact that has on us and tell them how to spend the money. It's our money. It is not their money. We know that it takes money to run our communities. That's not a question. But we need to talk about how much they should spend, and how much they should spend of these increases in valuation. And then lastly, I want to just talk a little bit about our Nebraska Farm Bureau PAC. I would ask you to donate to that PAC. In 2024, we have 25 seats open. 25 seats open. We need to get senators in those spots that understand agriculture, understand what it is to be a conservative, and to make sure that they spend their money appropriately, that they're for Nebraska, they're for our rural communities, and by donating to our PAC, we can help make that happen. We supported Governor Pillen. We supported a lot of other legislatures. 85% of the people that we've endorsed have won, but it takes a lot of money. The average senator that won their race took $157,000. That's not pocket change. So if we're going to talk people into being a public servant, we need to support them, and that takes dollars. So with that, I'd like to introduce Governor Pillen. Most of you all know him. He did a fantastic job on the trade trip, and ask you to fill in all the gaps, Jim.
Well, I think the first thing that's important to say is to make sure we reach out. Thanks, Mark, for your leadership of Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau organization, has been representing Nebraska farmers and ranchers forever. Carry a lot of water on policy. It's really, really important, so being a part of it. I think that a couple things that I want to just share so that you have confidence. And I had a number of people come up to me and were very gracious and said, but I wasn't supporting you early, Pillen. And I said, well, thanks for giving me the chance. That's all any of us can ever ask. And the one thing you can take to the farm as your governor, I'm about four things. I'm about our kids, I'm about taxes, agriculture, and values. We had transformative things take place for our kids. We have to recognize incredible opportunities for our state is to make sure no kid falls through the cracks, and that we get funding of our education off of the property taxes to the state to have a bigger impact. So that $1 billion Education Future Fund, making sure we had foundation aid going out across, is really going to help that. It doesn't solve it all, but it's a step in the right direction. And just so you know, we increased funding for K-12 education from the state $309 million a year ahead of compared to what's been before. That's historic and transformative. The other piece would be that we have 50% of our kids that are graduating from high school not getting a lick of further skill set development. We took state funding, got the property taxes off of community colleges to strengthen community colleges across the state so they truly can be trade schools, so that we get all of our kids in trade schools so they can become certified electricians, plumbers, diesel mechanics, welders, you name it, because those are the jobs that are going to be the career. That's the workforce for our economy to thrive. And I think that the other piece on tax policy, we have to stop spending. I'm an operations guy. I'm not a politician. I'm loving the ability to go in. It's incredible, the public servants we have serving at state government, but we are going to decrease spending at state government. We're going to shrink state government and improve services to Nebraska doing it. And that proof will be in the pudding on that. As your governor, to echo a little bit about what Mark talked about, I think there's three things that are really, really important for agriculture. Got to stand up and defend it. We have to grow it and we have to sell it. And we have incredible opportunities for the future of agriculture. And I think that's maybe the thing I want to talk about a couple minutes, that I hope I can pass the gift of belief and all of us walk away and say, what we're a part of in Nebraska agriculture, we're the best in the world. We're the best in the world. Does anybody appreciate that? We're so dadgum humble. We're so dadgum humble. We're the best in the world at what we do. And I think it's important we share that with our children, because so they understand who wants a job. We have extraordinary careers for our children, and nobody can compete with us in the world. And it's incredibly evident. This summer, we spent a 10-day trade mission in Vietnam, and we just got home from 10 days in South Korea and Japan. And when we talk about feeding the world, we are sustainable, and that's maybe a message I hope all of us in agriculture will embrace. Probably wasn't very long ago when somebody'd say, well, talk about the environment, and I'd get defensive and say, what the heck? Well, the hardcore reality is, does everybody realize when we're talking about fossil fuels and carbon scores that we Nebraska farmers were the first to go away from fossil fuels. We were the first to embrace electricity to irrigate our farms, to do away with when we started irrigation. When we started irrigation, how did we get the water out of the ground? Diesel engines. As Nebraska Public Power Districts covered territory, we started embracing, and we were the first to go to electricity. So what we have been doing since the founding for generations is extraordinary sustainable practices. And the more we embrace that, that just equates to a greater market, and it equates to more keeping our value at home on the ground. And so we were exposed to extraordinary conversations in the last 10 days about green energy. Quite honestly, it really doesn't matter what anybody thinks. That's where it's at. That's the market. It's time for us to really play at it and become greater. Really proud about E15 being passed this year. Really proud about getting a broadband office established and supported by the legislature. We have to get connected. And then the other thing, to prove what our carbon scores are so that we get more for our corn, we get more for our beef and proteins that we raise, that we have to be connected. We have to be able to have digital verification of what that is because the technology will prove, because of the Ogallala Aquifer, nobody can compete with us, and we do nothing but create more value for everything that we sell. I think in the end, our mission was really simple. It was to say thank you to all of our trading partners for, in Japan, we're #1 market for eggs, #1 market for pork, #2 market for beef, #3 market for corn, and #4 market for soybeans. So they're making sure that they're that they know we're grateful, but way more, hey, we just got to brag more. And brag we did. We bragged, and we're bragging more so that people understand what we can do in Nebraska. And maybe lastly, I think that for me personally it was really cool. In Korea, my father was a Korean veteran, and I wish everybody could feel and experience what we did, of how grateful South Koreans are to the United States, to us, to the folks for the Korean War and saving them, and they have an extraordinary democracy going on. They have an extraordinary economy going, and how grateful they are. Same thing from being in Vietnam in July. We were all across the country. We were in Ho Chi Minh City, formerly Saigon. We were in Hanoi. We met with lots of different businesses, and we met with different province chairmen, which would be like governors. And the last day, the Prime Minister of Vietnam wanted to meet. And we talked about healings of our country and how grateful Vietnam is for the United States. And as I've shared with Vietnam veterans, I hope that gives the Vietnam veterans piece of the extraordinary appreciation. But those are 3 countries. Vietnam's 100 million people. 50 million of the people are under 40 years of age. It's an extraordinary developing economy. They need us to feed their people, #1. And then same thing with Korea, same thing with Japan. They need us. And our job is to keep building those relationships. They're investing here on the clean energy and hydrogen, and so there's great partnerships. We don't have every answer. Great collaborative partnerships will do nothing but make things better for those countries and our states. So those are extraordinary privileges, incredible privilege to be the 41st governor of Nebraska, representing Nebraskans, and it's off the charts. But so, just in case you ever wake up and say, what the heck, just remember we live in the greatest place in the world. No ifs, ands, or buts. All I know is I was really happy to get home Tuesday night, and I think pretty cool. Maybe the last thing I'll share with you, I've had extraordinary experiences in the first 9 months. I've learned so much. I've gotten exposed to so many incredible people. This is one I want to share with you because I did not think of it like this, but I learned from a tribal leader in South Sioux City probably 5 months ago. He said, "Mr. Governor, can I share with you what I learned from my grandfather?" And I said, "By all means." And he said, "I want you to know my grandfather taught us that whenever we get together to make things better, it's really important. any meeting you have, it's really important, because whatever we do today has an impact, a big impact. He said it has an impact for 7 generations. 7 generations. I did not have the vision to think that long because I was, about my grandbabies, but it is really important. I don't know about you, but I've been looking at everywhere I go about the impact, and we're 156 years old as a state. A lot of things our founding fathers did a long time ago is impacting us today, 7 generations later, whether you talk about water, whether you talk about electricity, whatever it might be. So what I'd like to leave you is to think about, I think it's important that all of us get inspired to be a little more involved. Make sure we can have a say so we don't spend ourselves to death. We're so dadgum Nebraska nice that sometimes we don't want to call our neighbor that we elected to run for county government to say, hey, figure out how to run government better. Stop spending money, because it's so easy to spend somebody else's money. If we all get more involved, we can make sure that we have the best tax environment to live for our next generations right here in Nebraska, that we can stand up for our values and get comfortable being uncomfortable, talking about things that are really, really important to our families. So hopefully when we think 7 generations, that'll inspire us to a little greater degree. So thanks for the chance to be here. Thanks for all your support, all your work, Mark. Proud to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Governor, for those kind words and that challenge. Just remember, it is a privilege to be involved in agriculture. Let's not forget that. And go out and enjoy the rest of the day and have a good, safe harvest. Thank you.